do I have a motion to accept them as written?
So
Yes,
moved.
so moved.
Wait, we're
I
on,
se-
we're not,
Second.
are we there? Are we starting?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. The minutes of
so,
the minutes of the
but the-
fire committee are accepted as written for the February 2nd.
however, first item on the agenda was confirm a quorum of both committees, and I can confirm that buildings has a quorum.
And fire committee has a quorum.
Great, okay. You've ratified the minutes from the previous meeting for the fire committee, correct?
The minutes for the February 19th, 2020 were accepted as written.
And the draft minutes from the buildings committee, could I hear from the two committee members? You've received them and no changes?
No changes.
Could I hear a motion to accept?
Motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second? Mr. Baysmith, perhaps?
I will second that.
Yay, okay, all in favor, say aye. Okay.
Aye.
So now we are at the heart of the meeting, which is to clarify and accept the committee responsibilities going forward. Debbie, you want to talk a little bit about how we got here?
Yes, we began with some items that had not been completed in phase 2, just like a punch list. And the fire chief and Wally, we were going over those almost monthly, trying to get them resolved. And then the Vishers had contacted the fire department and expressed an interest to support the fire department in completing these items and possibly taking on some additional projects. So we decided to look at that from a buildings perspective, because the public buildings committee is responsible for any exterior or interior changes to the building. And one of the issues that have been brought up was the possibility of installing a baby box, which is a safe haven. It is an opportunity for young women that may not be in a position to care for their newborn babies, and they could drop them off anonymously. So that was another item that had set the impetus for us to go forward. So we invited Nancy Masenko, who is the chair of the public buildings, to collaborate on going forward and completing all of the items that needed to be done, and any future exterior or interior changes to the facility.
Yeah, we looked at this the way it would typically be within the village. Had there not been the large construction project of phase 1, and for that matter, phase 2 of the fire department that was handled by the fire committee. And at this point, it felt as though it's time to say, yeah, now let's solidify which committee does what. And so we came up with this as a sort of a definition of roles for the fire committee. And if I get anything wrong, Debbie, just help me out on that. For the fire committee would look at the services, would serve as the committee for the services provided by Glendale Fire Department. And then elements related to the delivery of that service. So in other words, trucks, turnout gear, and things like that. And that the fire committee would, or the fire department actually would, be in charge of the routine maintenance and the cleaning of the space, and of the space dedicated to the service. So anything related to the service of the fire department is a function of the fire committee. That was how we saw that. On the building side, as with all other village buildings, the committee would be responsible for all exterior and interior physical building components, foundation walls, floors, beams, windows, stairs, roof, the physical plant, HVAC, but not accessories and furnishings. we sort of thought that was a little excessive to provide that kind of oversight. So given that separation of duties, does that sound right to the committees, first of all? And then actually maybe Mayor Lofty and Mr. Cordes, does that sound like the appropriate separation of duties or clarification?
It sounds reasonable to me. I know we've talked about this in the past. And
Yeah.
I think it makes, while we were in the middle of doing
Right.
fire department renovation, the question did come up. Should this building matter?
Yeah,
And
I think Mr. Holweiler raised that question more than once.
At least Mr. O'Weiler did, maybe others too.
Yeah.
But we all decided that because the fire committee had been so intimately involved in the project for so long, that it didn't make sense to hand it off at that stage. But now we're at a stage where we have completed phase 1 and phase 2. And if there's any additional work to be done, I think it does make sense for the public building, for public buildings to be the one to manage it.
Okay. Any
Could I
other?
just stop it? Could I just, so I know where we're at here though? My understanding is that everything that would reasonably called a punch list, and to me, a punch list means stuff that the contractor should have done that he didn't do. And my understanding is that at this point, there are no punch list items of that nature left. That everything that the contractor should have done, he has done. And now we are moving on beyond phase 2 into additional work. Is that correct?
Chief Hardwick, do you have a response to that?
Chief, are you there?
You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
now we can.
Yeah, it's kind of with the punch list. So with the contractor from phase 2 finished up all of the stuff that they were going to do. There are items remaining, such as floor trim, that sort of thing, that just wasn't ended up not being part of the scope of what his contract was. The only things as far as what I would consider punch list items would be whatever it takes to get the final documentation from both IBI and from the building department just to get our final CO. Those are the items that are hanging out there from phase 2.
Okay, I guess we have a different definition of punch list then, but okay, as long as I understand that at least from the contractor's standpoint, everything that should have been done has been done. Now we are moving on.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nancy.
Nancy, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Any other discussion about the roles of the committees as we've described it? Mr. Bessel, you look as though you might have some thoughts.
I always have some thoughts. It's whether or not you want to hear them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the only thoughts that I have, just making sure that the work that was done is adequate and satisfactory. When I hear something like floor trim, I would think maybe that should have been included if it was an area that was to be redone. So let's make sure that there aren't items that are left over. Then with respect to your overall separation of duties, it's starting to make sense to me where I would tend to perhaps have a different opinion depending on the project. If there is a building that were repurposed, as for instance with the fire department, where renovations are being done to accommodate that function, then it wouldn't simply be a buildings committee issue, if you follow what I'm saying. If it comes down to a year from now, we have tuck pointing, or we have window work, or doors are wrong, or handrails are replaced, or roof, I get that. But in any circumstance, say where if the police were to move to a different building and renovations were done, that would not fall strictly to buildings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And in fact, when we were looking at some of the projects before us today, that, for example, the baby box project,
Right.
I think that if we consider that a service and the delivery of that service falls to the fire department,
Right.
the approval of that service, that new service that's being added, seems to me would come from the fire committee. And if that is approved, the preparation for the space, the adjustment to the building would fall then to the buildings committee. Does that sound like we're saying the same thing?
I think so.
Okay.
In general, that makes sense to me. We can't anticipate what gray areas might arise as we go forward, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and we all want the same thing. So yeah, we'll figure that one out. But on
Okay.
paper, this sounds like it could work, right? So buildings committee, do you support moving ahead with this?
Well, I really don't see how it's much different than what we've been doing.
Just formalizing it.
Kind of re-emphasizing this is how we operate. It's fine.
Okay.
What do you think, Jeff?
Is this been put in some written format?
It will be.
Okay.
Can I kick in here a little bit?
Yes.
Sure, Alan.
The whole system of our village operating with utilities committee, police, fire, everything. The buildings committee basically is the committee that would take a need from one of the other committees. It's just talking about the utilities down there, and if we needed to do something to those buildings, it would be the buildings committee responsibility to get the engineering done, to make recommendations to council. None of us work without the full body of council. So I think that what we're saying is, and I was against this for a while, but now I realize that you just can't separate
Right.
the committees from each other. They're all based on the same. I think that what you're trying to do here is fine, but I wouldn't just relegate it to the fire department and the buildings department. I'd say all committees, almost the fact that the responsibility for the physical buildings and properties that we own in Glendale should be the responsibility of the buildings committee. If the fire committee needs something from the buildings committee, the fire committee can ask the buildings committee to take that subject on.
Yeah.
I mean, but I wouldn't just relay it to fire and buildings. All the departments have building responsibilities, and their physical plant should be part of the duties of just the building committee. Once it goes from the base committee, to get the project done should be in the buildings committee.
Correct.
Okay, and that's why I said, at what point do we turn, the fire committee's planning of the new fire station over to the building committee, and then the building committee should have made the recommendation to council, not the fire committee. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. But
That-
we know the history. So, but going
but I'm
forward,
saying that's how it should have worked,
yeah,
and we didn't do that.
right. But going
You're
forward,
just proposing that we write this all down.
yep.
Okay, I'm for that.
Okay.
And Alan, in retrospect, I was not part of council during the time that this
Sure.
was being done, phase 2. However, when I came on to council in January, Chief Hardwick had a list of things that had not been completed. And so, the more I thought about it, the more we talked, it seemed inappropriate for him to be trying to track down getting these things completed if they were in fact part of phase 2.
Right. But he came to the committee with that punch down list,
Yes.
and then the committee should have gone to buildings and say, hey, fix this.
So I think we've defined the responsibilities now, and we have if everybody agrees, this clarification and it's put into writing. I don't know if that comes from the mayor, from Mr. Cordes, but some kind of definition possibly to be accepted by council as a whole.
Well, what I would like to do is have each committee chair, and have it blessed by the committee, write down what are the functions that are within our jurisdiction. And then we can look at those and, maybe have to noodle them a little bit, but we'll get at least a start on figuring out who's got what responsibility. There's always going to be overlaps. And we'll sort those out. I mean, at the end of the day, all committees do is make recommendations to council. Council is the one that has to make the decisions, with the exception of the Issues Committee in some cases. But otherwise, it all goes back to council.
So how about if Debbie and I draft up, I've got a start of the explanation of the separation of duties. How about if we draft up something, give it to you, Mr. Mayor, and we present it to council for blessing?
I think that'd be fine.
Debbie, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Done. So can we move to number 4?
I think that was number 4.
We're on 4.
I'm sorry, number 5.
Number 5.
Dr. Vischer's presentation.
Okay, I think David is going to help us with this presentation. He has it. Are you there, David?
Yes, I'm here. Let me know what you'd like to begin with.
Let's start with the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, and I'll just tell you when to advance the slide.
Just a moment here.
Well, first of all, while he's doing that, Ron is here with me. We want to thank you for having this meeting and listening to our proposal. So basically, we want to do a sort of a brief reason why we're here, what motivated, and so on. So if the next slide. The first thing we'd like to do is thank the village, thank the council for years of work that led to the development of this new addition. It is clearly a striking example of what the village of Glendale stands for in terms of standing up and in terms of taking care of the residents. Next slide. Okay, so thank you very much for this. That's where we start. Okay, so the rationale for this, and we're very strong supporters of the fire department. I don't think that comes as any surprise. We believe that there's something very, very unique and very valuable with this department and the people who constitute, because it's really made up of the people who constitute it. It's a jewel of the village. It's a jewel for anybody to have. What this fire department has and is. I think we would be hard pressed to find this type of dedication and so on. They are highly competent. We have people with extremely deep backgrounds and experiences that they bring every day to the job. They're very committed. They're here all the time. Very trustworthy. Residents embrace that aspect. They're known for the leadership in their field, and it's really hard. I mean, you have to kind of get into their field, but they're known. They're recognized leaders. They're innovators. One of the chiefs, Chief Yetter, is working on leading research with the University of Cincinnati to redesign fire gear to absorb carcinogenic causing materials. His leadership in teaching and in the field, moving the field forward, is something we don't get every day, and there are rare people like him. Similarly, Chief Hardwick is vastly experienced. He's taken on a huge responsibility in bringing in people who have little experience and training them up to be highly competent, polite, and ready to be of service. Chief Cly is extremely well connected through the community, through his experiences with working with the energy companies. And when things are going wrong, that's incredibly important. Now, what I'm trying to say is it's hard to put a value on these personal relationships, these personal connectedness, and the value they bring throughout the department. Next slide. These are just pictures showing the beautiful equipment, the distinguished black fire truck. Okay, next slide. Okay, so some of the examples, I mean, I could go on all afternoon and into the evening to talk about the skills of this fire department. But some concrete examples are the high IS2 rating puts them in best in class. The interconnectedness, for example, Chief is on the Cincinnati Health Collaborative, so he's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community and therefore the government or the state. Dr. Yetter is involved with hazmat and disaster preparedness operations, so when something happens, it's covered. Chief Cly partners with a number of providers, including Duke Energy, and I spoke about the cutting edge research and the leadership that this department has taken, given the sad passing of Captain Burns regarding carcinogens. This is a matter that's reached national attention and is very, very important. A lot of good things will come out of this for the whole field of exposure in general. Next slide. Okay, so our proposal is a simple one. Our family would like to provide monetary resources and what I would call moral support to further renovate the Glendale station. What we would also like, and we have some reasons for this, we'd like to donate the funding to the Glendale Firefighters Association. That's for two reasons. One is the firefighters know what they need to be effective in their job and in the complex conduct of what they do. And so if they know and they're kind of addressing what they need, they will own it. And when somebody owns something, that means a lot in terms of they'll get it done. If it happens that something was overlooked or something, then they know who did it and it was them. But the other thing is these firefighters are highly motivated and they want to do it. This process will be a positive for them, a sort of, if you will, reward for them. And when you have a positive and when you have people recognized for their contributions, they tend to do even better. And that will enable them to be moving forward in the future for the fire service in Glendale. What is it? What's it going to look like? There are going to be innovations. They'll be ready to help. They'll be ready to look for new ways to help. So I just think it's important, an important part of our donation, our proposal rather. Okay, next slide. Okay, we'll go through these fairly quickly because I think you're all familiar. The process we use, we first of all approached Chief Hardwick about this idea, and then we discussed what needed to be done. We engaged the firefighters and feel like we have a good idea. As a disclaimer, I am not a firefighter and neither is Ron. So we really we've relied on them for this information. The HVAC system needs to be, the heating and air conditioning installations need to be completed, and then the whole system regulated so that we have airflow in and airflow out for their health and safety. Just as an example, we did this, we measured temperatures, and the men's bunk room downstairs was 60 degrees, trying to cool the other parts, which were, the training room was at 76 degrees, the kitchen was at 77, and it couldn't really keep up. And then when they started cooking, the heat, it gets to be over 80 and pretty close to 85. So that's it's tough to function when you don't have that system of air circulation. Second part, next slide, is the old bay doors. There's some sealing and duct work, they tell me. But again, I'm not a buildings construction person, but the old bay doors are a source of losing heat. They need to be replaced with walls, windows, etc. And that's where we want to put the baby box, which is an important part of this whole project, because this type of service, these baby boxes, I have a colleague who's the director of the University Hospital Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. He's a neonatologist and tells me that these get used. And so they are an important function. UC is certain that neonatal ICU is certainly willing to work with the village on arranging to see any new babies that happen to be dropped off, so that the village on that side of it has the support from the medical side that's needed. It also would draw in other aspects of work in the community. It certainly would look at Glendale as a part of the health collaborative. We would, and babies and infant skin is what I do. And I have lots of connections at University of Cincinnati in their program for advancing infant skin health. So it's one of those things I think we could take advantage of the spirit of the village of Glendale. With that, we'd also propose some outdoor lighting and seating and a grill, so the firefighters could go out there. They like to be able to interact with the community. They like it when people see them and walk and want to stop and talk. And that's, again, a big value. Okay, this third one, next slide, sorry, is these are some photographs. And if you start on the one that's in the middle of the slide and kind of go down and to the left, there's some loose tiles. The railings are not in order. There needs to be a different handrail. The stair treads are damaged. And our biggest concern is the safe exit. If it were to happen that there was a big group of people in the town hall, and if it were to happen that the front exit were blocked because of an emergency or a fire, then the only way out is through this back staircase exit, and it's very dangerous to try to run down there quickly. So that's kind of scary. Okay, number 4, next slide. This is the training room, and all I'm doing is showing you a couple of pictures. This is the counters and cabinets that were installed in phase 2 are really nice because they allow the firefighters, when they host meetings, to have a place to provide coffee and drinks or maybe lunch or whatever. So it's a nice addition to their working space. The one showing on the right that shows the hallway is is kind of it's a cosmetic thing, but the village, the fire department does a lot of training. It has connections. One of the captains is from Scarlet Oaks, and Chief Yetter is from Cincinnati State and University of Cincinnati. So it's important that they be able to host meetings and training sessions from other departments. And so the space really needs to look professional. The training room itself looks like it's okay. It's a big room. It's got cabinet space and tables, but the electronics need to be set up and operational so they can pull in training videos and connect through all the power of the internet to do training and simulations and to dialogue appropriately with other people. So it really becomes the pulse of the department during training, and then certainly during any kind of emergency, this would be the hub. It would be where a lot of things take place. So that's something that would really be helpful to have that up and functional. Next slide is the kitchen. And on this, what we would propose is to increase the functionality and load it on the first floor. We have some video that I'll have David pull up in a minute, but we asked the firefighters if they would let us videotape them preparing a meal. That a couple weeks ago, and have some video clips to show you what we're hearing them say. We'd also like to have it on the first floor. Now, I must tell you that this comes from one of the firefighters whose last name is Vischer. He mentioned to me that having things on the first floor is really good because they will be closer to the trucks than if they have to run downstairs from the kitchen. Now, why is that important? Well, in the old station, before the bays were built, they didn't take long to get to the trucks because they were right there. But they want to get to those trucks. They want to be able to run down the hall from the first floor and get in the truck and leave. And again, that may sound not very important, but it's really important. Part is, and I think you'll see this in the videos, is the kitchen and meal preparation is an important place for where the firefighters interact, not only socially, but they talk to each other about what just happened, what their day's like, what their goals are, what they're struggling with. They work together, and their whole safety depends on their teamwork. Okay, so David, you've got the videos are numbered 1 through 10. So let's just go through them in order, and we'll just play them, and then I will make comments, or maybe I'll make comments while they're playing. They're each of us a minute. So hopefully we have time for this. Okay, this is. Do you have audio? David? Who controls the audio?
Unfortunately, no, I do not believe that we have the ability to put audio through, not through a setting I'm aware of.
Okay, well, let me just talk through it then. Let's go back and start that one again, okay? Okay, so this is a Thursday night crew. They've got the ingredients for dinner on laid out. They're on the tape. They have to use the table because they don't have much counter space. Can I play them? David, could I play them from my screen? Because that would have audio. But it's okay.
Just a moment. You cannot.
Okay.
It's shared screen is a feature that's limited to the
Okay.
host.
All right. All right. Well, we'll just,
Excuse me, I did just make you a co-host.
oh, okay. What does that mean? That I can share my screen?
Marty, if you wanted to go to, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see where it says share screen.
Yes.
You can pull up the videos on your computer and hit share screen and then select those and play them.
David, you may have to take your screen off.
Well, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do it. So, hang on. I guess Google is running it.
Fisher, can I make a suggestion that you email those videos to council?
Yeah, let's rather than waste time doing this, let's go back to the silent version. Now I've got to sign back in, I think. No, maybe not. Let's go back to this silent version. All right, so this basically shows them getting ready and where they're kind of spread out.
So let me just add, there are a lot of firefighters that get involved in the task. It's a team building task, a lot of coordination, but the table, because of the counter space, the table that I think people may have thought they'd be able to eat on really needs to be used for food preparation. And for many dishes, you know, if you put chicken on that table or something and then you're going to eat a bit later, that's not a good habit to get into. You know, go on, Murray.
Okay, let's go to the next one, video 2. Okay, here you can see how they're moving around.
Assign tasks to people so everybody knows what they're going to be doing in preparation of the meal. Obviously, they want to eat soon because they're hungry. And so everybody's doing something. And I mean, I was impressed by the coordination and the teamwork and the team building that this demonstrates. But I also was impressed by how the design of the kitchen really didn't facilitate 6 or 7 people looking at it at the same time.
I mean, the meal isn't all that complicated as such, and you would expect them to be doing different parts. So again, I don't think we didn't tell them what to do. There is a video.
Okay, hang on.
And you can, okay.
I zoomed in on the shelf space that's available, the counter space that's available there for food preparation. And it's just that little corner next to the sink, apart from the table.
Okay, I think that's done. David, the next one. Okay. So then we've got the firefighter over on the left of the screen is actually kneeling on the sofa while he's cutting up the chicken.
So even with the table, you need all the sides of the table to get all the people to do their tasks.
And they're talking among themselves about whatever. It's the interaction. I mean, that's what's going on too. So that's the important part of the meal preparation. Okay, next. Okay, this one is where you see them using the top of the refrigerator and the top of the microwave as counter space.
There's also storage on top of the cabinets,
Above.
above the cabinets there, and I don't think that's considered a good practice from a fire safety standpoint.
All right, just keep going through them, David. Okay, this one, now they're getting into more of the cooking parts. It's kind of crowded in there. They've got they don't have all the burners going, but they have 3 of them.
I also note that shelf above those burners, if that can catch fire, that those flammable materials those cabinets are made out of would be problematic.
Did we say it was 1 hour?
If you've looked at kitchens in other fire departments, there is space for the fire crews to be working in this coordinated fashion. I mean, it's different on how compressed our kitchen is here.
Okay, this one, notice the butter on top of the microwave with a knife in it. That's what he's using. He needs to use that butter for cooking. And then this one, this firefighter, right, Zach was handling the chicken, so he kept washing his hands. Good. Let's skip a couple of these because I think we've probably made some of these points. Let's go down to number 9, video 9, David. Okay, this is when they opened the window. I'm not sure what he was doing, but he didn't jump out.
Getting air.
Getting air. That was getting hot up there. And he went and got a fan.
Again, needing cabinet space. The previous kitchen cabinets moved down next to the training down on the first floor. So that cabinet space that you normally would have, those boxes and things that are above the refrigerator are now need to be stored up high there. And of course, with the temperature control as it currently is, running a fan to reduce the amount of heat given off by the stove or try to create some circulation was important.
Okay, and the last one, you'll see what happens are we on 10 yet? Yeah. So they're getting, I mean, they're moving, you can see they're moving forward. They're starting to cook the things. Some of them start before others. I think you'll see.
It's unfortunate you can't hear the phone ring.
Right. The phone, what happens here is the phone rings. That's when somebody's called the station without going through 911. So one of the firefighters answers it and is getting information about the emergency. And of course, then they have to leave. Except Troy stayed They didn't need the engine. He drives the engine, but he would have turned off all the things.
And of course, we were surprised because we just came in to do a video of cooking, and we're not in the fire service, so that's why I think we were surprised. This happens. And it just happened to happen the day that we were videoing.
Yeah, we didn't ask them to plan that. But it did happen. I happened to be by there the other day, and it happened again. Well, they almost finished cooking dinner, and they had a run where they had to get in the big truck. So anyway, that's
note that dining table there. Obviously, didn't eat on that table that they used to prepare the kitchen. They had to they prepared and eat downstairs, and so there really isn't a dining room down here. So I guess eating in the bay. We were done taping, and we really weren't here. I believe that's where they ended up eating.
Or they would have to. They said they would have to clean up and then eat. You know. So I think that shows what we wanted to on the videos. David, I think there's a couple, maybe one or two more slides. If you want to switch back to that. And then the number 6 priority was the electrical plan. There are some, this just shows in the bunk rooms. They don't have enough outlets to equip themselves while they're sleeping. They need to be charging phones and so on. So there needs to be an improved functionality. And it's on the left and the women's is on the right.
Both of them didn't have outlets conveniently or placed at all on walls that would enable them to be using any electrical device or and with phones and things needing to get recharged, et cetera. Not having an outlet motivates people to run cords across the floor. So if you get up in the middle of the night, you might pop. And everybody knows that electrical cords that run across violations that should be avoided. In trouble with chief.
Okay, the next slide, I think, is the last one. So thank you very much. This is a slide, again, I can't help it. Our son and his new bride, and you see Captain Eigel standing on the engine, and Eddie Hess, and our other son. So it's very obviously this is very important to us as a family. He didn't get the fire service blood from us, but he got some part of it, but nobody else in our family is in the fire service before Rob. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Well, I mean, since the vast majority of the things on your presentation fall into the hands of the building department. Wait, before I go any further, Marty, thank you. Your commitment, your generosity is overwhelming here. You've shown us 6 slides of your priorities that are, they're just, the fact that you'd be willing to take this on is extremely, extremely generous.
We have been grateful to the village. The village has been kind to us, very kind. The people in the fire department are a whole lot like family, even though we don't function on the fire department. And my opinion, for what it's worth, is I think this fire department does an amazing job of bringing this community together. It also serves young people who are just getting started. They have to learn somehow. And the leadership in this department, the officers, the chiefs, are willing to take on new people, new enthusiastic people, and help shape them. And Glendale's a big part of that, and that's a pretty big deal. Even though they're not Glendale residents, I think now firefighters don't compliment each other or compliment themselves. They don't pat themselves on the back. But I think there could be an opportunity to periodically put out publicity that would showcase the fire department, showcase Glendale Council, it would showcase everybody. It would put everybody in a good light to show off what folks are doing every day while they're here. And it's just one of those positive things that helps, because you never know when things are going to go, are going to get difficult. So I'd like to view this as something just like the other features in the village that we can celebrate, that we can be proud of. And people get recognition for coming and doing a good job, and we all need that. You need that as members, volunteering your time endlessly through all the things that come up. And so do the folks who come here. They run into burning buildings for reasons I don't understand, but that's okay. So that's our sentiment. Nancy, thank you for your comments.
Marty, this is Debbie. I was just looking through your priority one. These are things that you and your family is willing to help support financially. That's to complete the HVAC system. Is that one of those?
It's whatever is, so just to be complete, when we spoke with the chief initially, he sat down and made a list of the things that he felt were needed to increase the functionality. And then we met with the mayor, and I think you were in that meeting, and we needed a priority list, what's the most important thing, so people are focused. We have a list, we have some approximations on costs, because the chief put some of those together. But yes, I mean, we want to make this, we think those things are needed to give the firefighters what they need.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking back through your presentation. The HVAC, the bay doors, the stairs, training room, and the kitchen. What would be the priority with those 5 things?
Those are in priority. Yeah, those are in priority. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so that we put it that way. So we made sure we captured it. And this isn't ours this week. We met with the chiefs and the firefighters, and that's what they believed. Again, because we don't fight fires, or we just watch. We don't feel like we're in a position to make those decisions or anything, and so we have to rely on them and their and the process they used. They thought through it. They talked to the firefighters.
Pertaining to the HVAC system, it's my understanding that we still had some funds from VPGI that had been allocated to complete that, but would have to be reappropriated. They had been set up in the funds. There's about 18,000. Mr. Bessel, is that correct in your recollection?
Yes, we had appropriated a certain amount of funds for phase 2. And I won't go into all the gory detail about how we were able to get phase 2 accomplished in a cost-effective way. But there are funds available or could be reappropriated that should take care of the majority of the HVAC needs. The idea there was to try to use what we had and hope that it would work. There were some questions about whether it really would. So that could be updated with those remaining funds. I want to make sure though that we have functioning thermostat controls everywhere. It sounds, I thought we did, but I think with the shared system, maybe it's not functioning the way it should. Suffice to say, I think Wally and I can reopen that, and in my opinion, there'd be enough funding to correct that HVAC. We had it because we thought it might be needed.
Within the village.
Well, it was a part of the original plan.
Right.
At some point, though, we're going to need to kind of revisit how we got where we are so everybody understands where we are and why. And I won't do that now, but I would like to get to that at some point. But in our original estimations for phase 2, there was enough to handle everything. Some things changed as we went forward. So quickly to answer Debbie's question, yeah, I think those funds can be available.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? On the Safe Haven baby box, has that hasn't gone to council? That's an additional service of the fire department. So my guess is that the fire committee would have to approve that. And to some extent, I don't know that goes to council. Mr. Mayor, what's the process for that?
Well, Wally and I were talking about that earlier today. Some of the things on the list here obviously don't need council approval. I think the baby box as a substantial new service that the village is offering to the overall community beyond Glendale, really. I think that's a kind of a policy thing that I think the council would want to weigh in on.
And of course, the modifications to the building would have to be approved by planning.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a whole lot to deal with here. Can we? I'm wondering, do we separate? Do we let the fire? I don't know. How do we do this? How do we take this on? Acknowledging.
I have a suggestion on how we could take it on and how we can either move this forward or put it in a future budget or something. I think we started off trying to dissect this a little bit. What's a building responsibility? What's a functional responsibility? When this committee was put together, and I think Mayor Hoop put it together years ago to study the fire department issue, we brought in many disciplines because it was a big project. And we spent almost $1 million on this, bigger than any project I think the village has ever taken on, except for the fire truck that we bought years ago. And we're getting ready to take on something that's of a greater scope and a greater dollar amount, but that's to replace an entire water main under a street. So just to backtrack a little bit and then try to point us forward, a group of volunteers from the community, council people, firefighters, etc., met, and we had ideas that went all the way from, we're not building a new building, we're going to put a ramp on the west side, and we're going to be able to drive the fire trucks completely through, and we're going to reshore the floor. And then worse than that, someone said we don't need to spend any more money, let's just disband it. All the way to let's build a 6-bay station and even put the antique truck in it. So it was a broad look at everything. At the end of the day, the results that you see now, other than the HVAC duct hanging, which I don't like either, those results is what was on paper. Everybody walked away and said, this will work. This is functional for us. It makes sense. And it was taken to the finance committee and council, and it was a hard press to get it through because of the cost. There were a lot of people that didn't want to do it. So I am concerned about current spending on the fire department, the money that's been spent on the building and the money that could be spent now. And I'm just going to say this out of respect to everybody involved in the entire village. If there are monies available for people to bring forward, and I commend that, I support that. I do a lot of my own charitable giving, and it takes an awful lot to do it. I would propose that we spend those monies or bring those monies to things that the department needs. And as we project forward to a new fire truck, that's where the need is. And there are nice to have and there's necessities. Trucks are a necessity. And I would strongly recommend that we start focusing on necessities. There were funds that came from all various sources when we did this building. And I'm going to be very careful here, but some of the funds that were used for things that were not necessary in my mind. And I want to be cautious with that, but in some cases we got the best of the best equipment. In some cases we got beyond what we need. Logos on the backs of chairs. I mean, they look great, but was it something we had to have? Could that money been put to a better purpose? And things like the stairway was looked at. And things like the entire floor in the main bay, the old bay, was looked at. And we had plans to do something with that. And we rearranged plans and we ended up without a complete project. And we should have followed our exact planning, and it would have been a more complete project. The other thing I want to be very specific about is that this joint committee that came together spent hours and hours of time, and we had a plan that we thought was workable. And again, everybody said this works. This is what we want to move forward with. Not everybody was satisfied. I wasn't totally satisfied. I would have, well, forget what I would have done. And then council approved that. Now we want to do more things. And I think at some point, everyone involved needs to respect those decisions and live and work with this for a while and figure out, maybe in the future there might be some different plans that will work better or not better. But people need to respect what was done. And then if there are areas where we can improve, let's do it, but let's do it in a way that respects those decisions. And again, maybe there's somewhere where we can use money like for a fire truck. And lastly, to bring everybody back to where we kind of are and why the building is the way it is, there was an extremely strong desire on the part of everyone. There were different opinions about color of the brick. There were different opinions about how many bays to build. But the one thing that was true through the entire process was try to keep the building as flexible as possible, so we don't have to go through major renovations if we want to change use again. And it was even to the point where one suggestion, I started to say this is what I would have done. One suggestion was, council chambers is too small. Let's bump it out into one of those bays, just one bay to the south. And then there's a large enough room for council to have a better council room chambers, and it would be a large enough room for a training room. And we didn't do that, and we probably should have. It would have left more room and flexibility within the rest of that building. And it would have been more of a multi-purpose building and satisfied some more requirements. From there, it transitioned into, we'll put up partition walls, but no, we had to have solid walls for the training room. So that's what we did. The idea and desire to maintain flexibility in those bays is still paramount in my mind, and was paramount in the minds of all the people that put the work together to build that. Once you start running plumbing and electric and all those types of things, once you remove the bay doors, which I think now that they're sealed up, and I don't know, I know, you know, sunshine shining in or whatever, but now that they're sealed up, I think they function a lot better and they're a lot more airtight. Again, I think that we need to maintain flexibility there, and that was a key element for all of that committee. I do not think it's wise to change that at this time. And it really, in my mind, goes against the work that was done and the effort that was put forth and the foresight that was brought to the design as it currently stands. I see the crowded kitchen. We can add a little counter space and shelving. I see the need to update the HVAC and the stairs. That should have been done in the original phase too. We used money for other things and it should have been put into the stairs. That's something that if the fire department, you know, I was told might be able to do that. If they can't, then we'll have to do it. We'll have to do it with whatever money we can try to find that might be left over after we fix the HVAC. So that's kind of, here's the history and here's where we are now, and here's how I think we need to try to contain what we do going forward.
Before we start to dissect this further, Marty or Ron, can you explain one thing? It seemed to be extremely important that your contributions to this expanded project list be made, or at least through the Firefighters Association. But I also heard, maybe I misheard this, that you saw the Firefighters Association as being the project management for these items. Did I mishear that?
Well, let me speak to that. The idea was that obviously nothing can be done to a public building without the village's involvement. But the Firefighters Association is a 501c3, and they know, the most important thing is they know what they need. They're the ones who know. And the concern we have is that when they're responsible for the details of the designs and then would be executing it, that they will get it done. I also must say that we have very strong concerns. We've refrained from saying them this way, but in our opinion, this firehouse as it stands, and I know there was a tremendous amount of money spent. I know there were tough decisions to make. They've been living in it now, and they know that it doesn't work. It is not okay to have no air return from the training room. It's not okay to have a 15-point spread in temperature. It's not okay to have stairs where somebody could be injured in trying to get out of a building in an emergency. It is, to us, that's why we came forward. We want them to have what they need. If they don't, they may have been involved in the planning, and I am not disparaging what was done at that stage. I just think that in the reality of having lived in the space now, know what's working and what's not working. We are willing to provide resources for this project. It's important for the I think we send a wrong message to the firefighters if we cannot ensure they have a functional workspace. And it just doesn't seem like something Glendale would do. It seems like it would need to be fixed. We recognize there were constraints on the budget. That's one of the reasons we came forward. Had we known there were difficulties in the finances at the time, we would have come forward then. It was an experiment. In a sense, I do them all the time and I find out that what we thought was going to happen didn't. And we have to revise the plan and do another experiment. Now, that's expensive. Granted, that's expensive. But this is a high value operation in our opinion. It would cost a lot of money to try to achieve the same operation that you have now. So we have some fundamental disagreement with the way this building is. It's, again, you cannot put safety in jeopardy. You can't put the firefighter safety in jeopardy by having things that are not according to the way they should be.
I'm not denying, Marty, that we should fix the HVAC if it's not working and it's the stair needs to be.
The stairs, yeah.
That needs to be repaired. And it should have been repaired as a part of phase 2. The stairs, the letting the HVAC to see if the unit would function okay as it was, since the contractor felt it had extra capacity. But we've seen that's not necessarily working. I agree with you, that should be fixed. The village has budget money to do that. Again, the stairs should have been done in the phase 2 work. The way it's stacked up, we should have been able to do it. That can be done. I'm not denying that we need to be able to get up and down stairs safely.
So should Buildings Committee at this meeting, we can deliberate further, or we could look at recommending to the village that the village move forward with the HVAC work that's required. But number one, I honestly think the stairs, that's a safety issue. I would flip that and have Buildings Committee recommend to the village that we move with great speed on repairing, rehabbing the stairs to make them safe. Number one, HVAC second. Should we do that? And then we talk, then perhaps Marty and Ron, we could talk about what remains. If the fire committee presents the baby box and that's approved by council, that's going to require the modifications to the side of the building. And maybe that's when we talk about the feasibility of changing the bay doors and adding the kitchen and that, to making those changes that are a part, Marty, of your presentation. Does that first of all, does that make sense to my colleagues on building and, for that matter, fire, and to the mayor and Mr. Cordes? Does that make sense?
Let me tell from my standpoint, couple of thoughts. You indicate that the projects were more or less listed in the order of priority. And I noticed that the kitchen was towards the end of the list. So am I reading that correctly, that the kitchen is towards the end of your priorities?
Marty,
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, that is toward the end of our priorities. However, we are here and we will come forward with the funds that are needed. Again, having seen how the firefighters' kitchen, the fact that they're so far away from the truck and everything,
Let me add.
It's just something I think that goes to, we want the firefighters to have a space that works for them so they don't have to go out and get food and come back to the village. You know, if something's not functional, you don't use it, then you might as well not have it. And again, if we put a new kitchen in and it's downstairs, I'm confident that the firefighters will use it. I'm also confident that some of this is going to go a long way to, some of this is going to go a long way to getting from the department. Now, I'm saying that right in front of the chief, and he's probably going to throw me out, but that's okay. But they continue to try to find new ways to serve the village. And I think that's what's important. So yes, some of it's money, some of it's getting certain things fixed, but it's the effect of all of these things combined, I think is what we're trying to say.
Well, that raises the question is, do you see this offer and this proposal as the whole thing, take it or leave it? Or, I mean, do you have some flexibility here in what the village might accept and what we may not be ready to accept?
Let me just, before we answer that question, Don, let me add my perspective on this. Not only am I not a firefighter, I'm really not someone who uses the kitchen as much as I might. And when I saw when I see Marty and our kitchen, I know that it's bigger than the kitchen that 6 people are using for the normal preparation of a meal in the firehouse. I'd like the council members to go home to their own kitchens and look at the amount of counter space, shelf space, whether they do food preparation on their dining room table. The wooden shelves for their cabinets are less than 30 inches above the flames of the gas stove. Whether if they had a grease fire that might cause the cabinets to catch fire, whether there's space above their cabinets to store flammable materials that might additionally catch fire, and whether they believe that their homes are safer relative to fire hazards than the firehouse is. I'm not going back. One of the things that I decided on this was the decisions that have been made in the past were very appropriate, were very financially responsible. As Marty's presentation has shown, we're very grateful for the support and the immense amount of money the village has spent to create what is overall a wonderful firehouse situation. But I think it was Mike that said about a week ago, as we listened into the discussion concerning the Bethany water situation, that if there's a problem that you find, you go back and fix it. And you recognize that we put a lot of money into the firehouse. We have found problems in the short period of time people have been working here, and with a new situation. And now we find those problems, we go fix it. And we asked ourselves, well, what's stopping us from fixing it? And the answer that
we're just trying to clarify the offer here, Ron. I mean,
I'm sorry?
I see what so what I'm getting is everything's a priority.
I would like to understand, I'm not saying everything's a priority because we need to noodle on this, as you said, Don. I think that things need to be done in order, and some things are really, really, really high priority, but when people are saying, well, that's not a high enough priority to do it, I would really like to understand more about why they feel it's not a high enough priority to do it. Because it's looking backward at the reasons we did it before, and that those were valid reasons. I don't disagree. Those were valid reasons for doing what we did. This is not at all critical of the past. This is saying, hey, we've learned the village an opportunity to improve upon what we have.
Okay,
Priority 1 and 2, I think, is a village priority that should be covered perhaps in large part by the village. But priorities on 3 through 6 are department priorities, I think. And we're proposing to enable the Firefighters Association to have the funds to see those through. And we recognize the village has got to decide whether having flexibility in this training room is important, more important than other things that are important to the firefighters.
okay, and I want to state very clearly that we very much appreciate you folks coming forward. And really what I've been saying, and some of us have been saying, is just to kind of clarify what's on the table right now. I don't think we're going to be at a decision point today. So this is to understand what is being offered, which I think is great, that you're willing to do this or consider it at all. What I would like to know, just one other clarification, is you do indicate that's very important to you, that the money for the donation goes to the Firefighters Association. It would be very, very important to the village that we have, I guess, substantial control over what is done with our buildings. And I would hope that there would be a way of setting up, and Mike alluded to this as a committee of, a small group of people from both the village and the Firefighters Association, and obviously you two as the donors here, of, working out and communicating with each other of how we feel as this thing goes forward. And, I just want to make sure you're not, the fact that the money is going to firefighters does not mean that they have carte blanche control.
That's right.
Okay.
So this is Adam Eigel, the president of the association. So the Vishwas came to us and talking with me and BJ, who is treasurer, as well as Mike Burnham, who has been out. So the way that we were going to accept the money was and do the projects was everything was going to go through a committee on our side of the Vishers would be part of that committee. There would be 2 or 3 from the association side as far as board members, and then a couple from the firefighters to get opinions going. Nothing would get done until going to appropriate either planning or building, because if it has to be done with the building, we have to go through that way, and fire committee. So nothing would ever get done until we go through the proper channels in this building, because we know it's not our building, it's the village's building. So that's where we were coming from on that side of it.
Okay, that helps me. That
I
helps
think
me.
also to add to what
Adam just said, the idea, the sort of best
way is to do this,
as a team, as it always is. So
it's the village, the association, and whatever we can provide. It's got to be worked together as a team. But I think for us, we want to make sure that, I can't design a fire station. I have no idea how to do it because I don't even do that job. There are some things I could design because I'm familiar with the area. I don't want to pretend that I have expertise that I don't. So I want to rely on them. What I find countless times is that the firefighters have a lot of insight and a lot of reasons for what they do. They just don't always shout it out from the rooftops. And so I better ask them because they're not going to necessarily. And I find that to be the case in other working groups as well. And so in my life experience, I've recognized where some of my most valuable assets are the ones who don't speak up too much because they're afraid of offending somebody. And so on. But I think, again, keep in mind, the village did an amazing job with this building, with this fire department. We're proud of it. We're proud of the village. We want to move forward in the most appropriate way we can. And that means when we find out there's something that needs to be changed, then let's go change it. Let's not worry too much about how we ended up. I mean, I do research, and if I couldn't tell you how many times I thought something would come out a different way than it actually did, and then I'm stuck trying to explain why it came out that way. That's just what happens sometimes. You cannot anticipate everything. It's not within control.
Can I?
And again, the village has never had this type of operation before. There's not a lot of history that we can rely on. So, again, there's priorities for safety, there's priorities for functionality, and we certainly want safety, we certainly want the functionality. But again, let's assume we can all work as a team, and if someone is concerned or doesn't agree, then let's bring it out and talk about it until we figure it out. Because that's and probably identify even better ways. And that process of dialogue and communication is so
let me add something also.
Wait, we have a 4:30 stop on this meeting. I want us to be able to arrive at a point where, because clearly we're not going to be able to conclude everything now. I want to set up what next step is when we will talk. I agree, Marty and Ron, that we need to have as much input as possible from the firefighters who know this best, as you say. But there are real issues obviously on these 6 items on your list, and the village's responsibility for a couple of them, I think, that we've already talked about. Can buildings, and if Debbie, if your committee, if you want to do a joint committee again, I wish we could do this in person. Man, I wish we could do it. We've got to continue this discussion. Is there a time that we can, in the next week, before the next council meeting, perhaps, can we reschedule, or can we schedule another meeting? Does that sound like what we need to do? First off, is everybody in agreement that we can't arrive at a conclusion today? This is way too big.
I agree, Nancy, that we do need another meeting, but one thing that I've come away from listening to everybody is that the village does have 2 areas of responsibility. Right. One with the HVAC, which we know we have funds in VPGI that were set aside for it. The other, Mike, you had mentioned that if the stairs are unsafe, that should have been taken care of in phase 2.
It should have been taken care of in phase 2. There was money available in phase 2. It was used in other areas.
Okay,
well, what I want to be clear about when we talk about the stairs, and the stairs are in bad shape. The stairs were an issue. The stairs were always an issue. The stairs were said that we needed to put new tiles and make sure the handrails were safe. That was a priority. How it got moved once this project got going, I do not know. There were many things that were changed along the way. The contractor involved said that there were changes, there were things that were being attempted to be changed as he was working. So how that happened, I'm not sure. But definitely that needs to be done. There should be money available to do that. I do have plans to visit with Wally and revisit how much money there is, what we think the HVAC cost is going to be, and just some ballpark on what the stair cost is. Now, regarding this idea of we separate this is fire, this is building, I think everybody needs to understand that this is a village building that has multiple functions, where the volunteer fire department is housed. It's functioned great for a number of years. We've made enhancements to the truck bays. If there are specific things wrong with the kitchen, we can add cabinet space, move cabinets where they need to be, et cetera. The kitchen is not that vastly different than the kitchen that existed there before. I understand look towards the future, but again, a large committee of people agreed this will work for us. So it's a village building. The fire department functions within it. Anything the fire department wants to do in that building or any additional functionality that needs to be added, we need to realize that it is a village building. It's not carte blanche. The fire department wants something, and if there's room, we add it. And I think that's a very important point that we shouldn't just overlook.
Okay, that said, I just would like to get clarification that the HVAC and the stairs are two areas that the village can take care of. And we could go forward as of today with the village taking that responsibility. And then as far as the other 4 areas that the bay doors, the training room, those items, that would be something that we would discuss at another meeting. I understand your position that the building has multiple uses, but I think that historically it has been a fire department. You know, we have the town hall, we have council chambers, but it has been the home of our fire department. And as what I've heard is that the kitchen was always preferred to be on the first floor. And at some point, the decision was made, no, it will not be on the first floor.
The kitchen was preferred, I think, by someone or some group within the fire department to put the kitchen on the first floor. As the plan evolved, again, the entire committee involved in the plan decided as a group that keeping the kitchen where it was appropriate, and it made sense to everybody.
Can I ask the Vishers, please, if we looked at the village taking care of HVAC and the stairs, does this, it's back to Don's original question, how does this affect your commitment and your interest in funding the changes going forward, the remaining, how does that affect?
It would not affect it. I mean, we would, you know, as part of the plan, we would certainly be fine with that as, then we would be willing to, be able to do other things. I think, again, that if the village does it, the point is the needs get met. And I think
Exactly.
the key.
Okay, so.
My perspective from the 40,000 foot level is that the village is exceptionally fortunate and talented in achieving an ISO Class 2 fire department in terms of the services that it provides. I believe that puts us in the top 2% of fire departments nationally. And when I look at the firehouse, I ask myself, is our firehouse in the top 2% of firehouses nationally? There are parts of it that I answer yes. And there are parts of it that I say, hey, I as a person that can contribute some funds might be able to make other parts of it consistent with the level of services that it's providing so that those levels of services can be maintained for the next 10, 20, 50 years, because the fire department physical structure, this building, and how it's able to attract young trainees and talented and experienced people that want to work in a vibrant environment, all those things depend on having the right physical structure, the right building behind them. And as I said, as I took a tour through this, I was surprised at where things stood. It did not seem to me that we were close to being in the top 2% of the buildings of fire departments nationally. And so, you know, Marty and I say, well, what can we do? It's one thing to observe that and say, hey, I don't like it. But Marty and I are taking the additional step to say, what can we do? And it's that 40,000 foot view. And it's not at all looking back and saying, hey, because we made decisions in the past, those decisions were properly made, and we understand that. But I think there's an opportunity now that we're presenting to the village.
So can we look at, because we need to wrap this up for today, could we could we take the next steps at a meeting, say June 25, 26, or 30? Same time, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Does that possibly work for the buildings committee, the Vishers, the Chief Hardwick, and your designees, Mr. Bogrand? Can we do that?
As far as the
we
fire
can.
committee, I can make it on June 25th at 3. I will be out of town on the 26th through the 30th.
Okay. June 25 at 3. Can others do this as well? And this is assuming we can get a Zoom connection.
Yeah, Wally just had a good point. Should we make it at 2 o'clock or something? Because obviously this discussion has taken us past where we expected to be.
All right. Okay, then let's try 2 o'clock. Does that work?
I think that
On the
makes-
25th, can we do that?
Yes.
You said the 25th, right?
Yes, 25 at 2. Okay.
Alan, are you talking to us? Because you're muted.
I'm available.
Okay.
Great.
Yes.
Mike, are you available? Okay.
Any pre-work for that meeting?
I definitely think we need to get some clarification on the HVAC and the potential costs of getting that up to date, and the stairs, what it's going to take and what costs might be associated with getting that taken care of by the village.
And we need to get a clarification on how the baby box concept is going to move forward and be approved by council.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what does success look like for the HVAC system? Because, you know, the 15 degrees, 20 degrees differentiation between rooms. I've worked in $1 billion building, and even in that building, we're unable to deliver that capability. So need to understand what success is before we try to spend too much money on that. Maybe we need a mini split system for the kitchen, which uses a lot more BTUs during the time of cooking. So maybe that's a solution.
Some of the things that we would need to look at, Mike, that were considered early on that actually put the budget in a position where it just wouldn't work. The contractor thought he could make it work, but I think a mini split system, the current system that's there, doing part of it, and then making sure that we have thermostats and proper air return in individual rooms. And with dampering, it can almost be achieved, at least get it within a 5-degree temperature difference.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, I didn't want to
Okay.
solve it now. Just
All right.
understanding that there's a success criteria for that.
Absolutely. Okay.
I also might like to offer that, you know, I'm sitting here trying to think out loud. How do we try to maintain some of the best out of the previous decisions, some of the best out of the future decisions, and trying to maintain flexibility within the building as much as possible that we've talked about. Is it even possible there outside between those doors and the training room, there's an area that could be used for eating, whatever, with tables, et cetera. Food prep could still be upstairs, but you could have that camaraderie down in that lower section, and less confusion.
How about,
Utilizing bay doors to be able to open one or both to the outside if there were a grill outside. Some value in considering that as well as a compromise step.
can I suggest that the mics and everyone else, if there are questions that, these are extremely good questions, valid questions, can you email them to me and I'll include them in as discussion points in the agenda? Not just from the mics, but anyone else for the next meeting. And we're talking about June 25 at 2:00. Okay?
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait a
Oh,
minute. Wait a minute.
sorry.
I'd like to have a few comments now.
Okay.
All right, I've got to listen to everybody, and I think there's Mike, I think you have some misunderstandings about what we're doing with phase 2. I mean, all we're looking for, we've been able to manage and work through this building. All of the phase 1 was wonderful. It's absolutely a fantastic addition to the department. Renovation work, I think what we've got done, we just need to get finished. I mean, there are guys that there are parts of what we've done here that just, I mean, it's like the trim on the wall. That's just something that we didn't fund the floor.
It was funded. It should have been funded. It should have been done, Chief. As a matter of fact, that entire floor that is in that area, we had it set to be resealed for about $3,000 and then could put trim on it. The suggestion at that time was that carpet could then be put in, or a remnant could be cut and bound and put in any room that could easily and quickly be removed once it got worn out. We opted not to do that. For what reason? I have no idea. It was something that was made after the fact, but that was one of the things that would have made this whole thing a lot better. Putting trim, baseboard, etc., getting that done. At what point that got changed, I do not know. And those were things that you've got a scope of work that's finished and you want to proceed with it, and you change it in the middle of the project and it ends up costing you more money, and you end up with a project that does not look complete when it's done. Because you didn't follow.
Mike, that is why we want the buildings committee to be over any structural changes, interior or exterior. So, you know, you don't have these changes during the process. You know, again, I come in.
There shouldn't have been changes during the process. We laid it out. We hired
but there were.
a manager to run it for us, and we didn't get the result we were looking for in many parts of it.
Okay.
Hey, Deb, excuse me, Debbie, this is Alan. Hey, I've got to go.
Yeah.
So I'm on the road, and I just really got to get back on the road. So
Okay.
tell me when you want to meet. I'm fine with it. I'll be there.
Okay.
We got to discuss this more. There's no sense in worrying about what didn't happen or did happen. We got what we got. Let's get moving on and go from there. Okay. Thank you all.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alan.
Bye-bye.
Chief, are you okay if we, do you have other points you'd like to make, or are you okay if we?
I'll save them for another time. It's not going to get accomplished today. I mean, overall, the fire department is very satisfied with what we have here. We're just looking to get some things finished up. That's it. When we had finished up, and I had finished in my mind that this project was done. When Marty came to me and asked me about, hey, we'd like to help, that opened up a whole nother area. We weren't worrying about the insulation, or we weren't worrying about we had been past all that. Now we get to the point where we've got an opportunity to fix up some of the things, and you know, yeah, maybe it is a little bit more. The reason that it went to the association, or the conversation about going with the association, was so that the village wasn't expending those funds. It was coming from the association, clear separation from Village of Glendale budget. That's it. There's no heartache up here. I mean, the heartache is we're just trying to do the best that we can do with what we've got, and we do that. That's it. No more, no less.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Marty and Ron in particular.
Mhm. Yes.
So,
I agree. Thank you, Marty and Ron. It's very generous of you to even think about it.
Yep.
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. We will pick this up again on the 25th at 2.
See you all tomorrow.
Thank you.
It's your birthday, wife's birthday. No, it's the 25th. Oh, the next meeting, yeah.